Rich and I co-authored this oral history of a punk venue in Washington, D.C. called the Safari Club. So the book is called Live at the Safari Club. And we got quotes from over 200 members of our community telling the story of this very active club from 1988 to 1998. But we also got a quote from Ingrid Newkirk, the founder of PETA. And we found out that the building that this club was housed in actually held a chicken factory in it 8 years earlier. And Ingrid told the story about how PETA held their first protest outside the place in 1980. So this building had a long history of animal rights before we even knew it.
My name is Shawna Kenney, and I'm a writer and a teacher. Went vegan. I don't really have a hard date. I don't really know exactly when I went vegan. I think it was around 2004. I kind of slid into veganism. I was vegetarian-ish from the age of 18 and became fully vegetarian in my 20s. And when I met my husband, when I was 26, he was 23, he was vegan and I was vegetarian. So it was just kind of a natural evolution into veganism for me. Over the next couple of years, I learned how to cook vegan, and it was a matter of phasing dairy and some of those other things out of my life.
Why did you go vegetarian first?
I've always felt really connected to animals. Since I was a kid, I grew up in rural southern Maryland, a very small town, and I could see that crabs and snakes and rabbits and horses and all of the animals that I was interacting with were sentient beings, so I felt very connected to them and aware of their pain. And I read all of the animal books when I was a kid. I was a big reader, all of the horse books and all of the James Herriot, All Creatures Great and Small books. Thought I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a kid. And so it just seemed like a natural evolution. I didn't really have a word for how I felt. And then when I was a teenager, I was really involved in the punk rock scene in Washington, D.C. area. And vegetarianism was kind of becoming prevalent on the scene. PETA started in the early 80s, and I came into punk rock about 84. So I would start to see animal rights literature at shows and handed out on the mall, on the National Mall. So I finally had a word for what I was thinking all of these years. So I knew that I wanted to be a vegetarian. And then, funny enough, I went to my 20-year high school reunion in 2007, and they had all of the yearbooks out, and they had all of the senior superlatives in there, like, most likely to succeed kind of things. And I'd forgotten this, but I was voted most likely to become vegetarian in high school. I don't know why. It must have been based on I think I gave a speech in speech class on why people should be vegetarian or something like that. It was very much on my mind.
And you hadn't even heard of vegan at this point.
No, yeah. Vegan wasn't really a word
in your
being used
circle.
in Southern Maryland in the 80s. In my circles at all. Even in the punk rock scene, didn't really know any vegans until maybe the late 80s. I met some people from New York from the punk scene there who were vegan.
I guess you've heard of John Joseph or whatever.
Yeah, I know him.
He's got a funny book.
Yes, Meat is for Pussy, yes.
Why didn't you go vegan sooner?
I think I thought it would be hard. When I met my husband and he was vegan, and he made it seem very easy and natural. I think I was still sort of hanging on to cheese. That was the last thing to go. I never really liked milk. I always hated eggs. I think I was just kind of maybe even addicted to cheese. I just felt like, well, I need this good tasting thing on my pizza every once in a while, or I just felt like it was the last thing to go for me. I don't know why.
What made you finally realize it was something you needed to get rid of?
The more I read and the more I learned about the process of how cheese and milk comes into our lives, the more it didn't sit well with me, and it started to gross me out. And I'm very sensitive to textures and different kinds of foods anyway. So the more I thought about it, the more I didn't feel right about it. And the whole time when my husband, then boyfriend, and I lived together, I never brought cheese into the house. I never bought it to have in the home. I was very respectful of the way he was eating. So it just became very natural and easy for me to eventually let it go, because we're cooking together and I'm cooking for us sometimes, so I didn't really need it for myself.
Okay, and then what was the year again you said you went vegan?
I think it was around 2004, because we had a vegan wedding in 2002, and we were in Veg News magazine. But I remember that there was a big discussion with my family about the food and what was going to be served, and there weren't a lot of vegan weddings happening at that time. We did find a bakery that could make us a vegan cake. We had a wedding in Los Angeles and a wedding in DC, and found bakeries in both places to make vegan cakes. But we just had appetizers at the wedding in LA, and some of my family was worried that the vegan appetizers weren't going to be sufficient for everyone. And I remember them getting a cheese platter and having it in the bar in the reception afterwards. And so I feel like maybe that's the last cheese I had, but I never really marked the day. Like after that, it just kind of fizzled away. And I know some people know the exact date that they became vegan. They mark it like an anniversary, but I've never really been like that.
Well, I just usually ask what year.
Yeah, it's ish, yeah. The early 2000s.
And it sounds like you needed that ethical push and maybe some material to educate you on what actually is involved in the process.
Yeah, I think something just had to click for me in my brain. I think I always knew intellectually what was happening. For some reason, I was able to push that out of my mind for the sake of my desire at the time. But at some point, I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't turn away.
Okay, so then 2004, moving forward-ish, you're vegan now, and did anything change physiologically, mentally, or emotionally?
Yeah, at first, nothing much changed. It just became a lot easier to eat with my husband, and while we're traveling, we're eating the same exact way, and it just felt natural. We started cooking together a lot more. We started growing our own food when we moved from California to North Carolina. We started thinking a lot more about where food comes from and how to nourish ourselves. It just became easier. Life with him became easier, I guess.
And what kind of foods were you eating then? Like just basically legumes, greens, grains, fruits, veggies, mushrooms, nuts, seeds?
We were eating tofu and, tofu scramble. And at the time there was a company called Fantastic Foods. So they had a lot of boxed products like a falafel and shells and curry and things like that. We'd eat pasta, rice, things like that. And then some of the vegan products started to come onto the market. When I first became vegetarian and then vegan, there was just like tofuti ice cream, and there were a couple brands that made vegan products, but there weren't a lot. And then there started to be more and more, and at first that was very exciting for us because it just didn't exist before. Wow, now we can have a fake chicken sandwich or a frozen vegan pizza, things like that just were not even on the table before. So it became exciting. It gave us a lot more options when we went out to eat, when we were grocery shopping, when we were traveling. And it was easy to share with non-vegan friends because then they could kind of see that vegan food could be similar to what they're used to eating, and maybe they wouldn't miss what they think they will miss. But after years of eating this way, I found that I wasn't feeling well. And in 2019, I was 49 years old, and I was diagnosed with stage 1 fatty liver disease. And that was really scary to me because my father died of advanced fatty liver disease, which he did not know he had. And he had a very different diet and lifestyle than I do. He smoked and drank and ate meat and thought nothing of it. I took that diagnosis really seriously. The doctor wanted to put me on statins. I knew all of the side effects that my father had suffered on those drugs, so I refused, and I asked the doctor if there was anything else I could do. And he said, well, diet and lifestyle, some people can reverse it, but most people won't. I said, what should I do? What do you mean by diet and lifestyle? I'm already a vegan, I'm already a yogi, I ride my bike, I walk every day, I don't know what else to do. And he said, just diet and lifestyle. And it was very vague. So he said, I'll give you 6 months, we'll come back and do some more testing if you think you can get this under control. So I went down the research rabbit hole and I read The Starch Solution by Dr. John McDougall. I started following a lot of the plant-based doctors online. Dr. Greger, learned how to cook by watching Chef AJ videos, listened to the Rich Roll podcast. Just the deeper and deeper I got into learning more and more about food, the more I realized that I had been eating a junk food vegan diet. And so I started to move more toward a whole food, plant-based diet, cut all oil out of our cooking at home, started eating a high starch, high fiber diet, and 6 months later went back and had blood work and had a scan done, and the hepatologist declared me to be disease-free. I had reversed my fatty liver disease, and he discharged me without return.
I'm a little confused though, because when you first moved to North Carolina, prior to all that, you said you were growing your own food and stuff.
Yeah, but we only lived here for a few years at first. Came to North Carolina initially for grad school.
Yeah.
And there were no vegan restaurants at the time in our town.
So it was easier to eat healthier, I guess?
Yeah, so, well, we realized that we had been very spoiled in Los Angeles, and we had all kinds of vegan restaurants and grocery stores that catered to different diets. So when we moved here initially, there was no Whole Foods, there was no Trader Joe's, there were no vegan restaurants. So we grew a garden. You know, we started to learn how to cook our own food. But after living here for a few years, we moved back to Los Angeles and kind of went back into eating out all the time and eating the vegan products that are easily available on all the shelves. So either way, it wasn't a whole food plant-based diet fully, you know, and it definitely wasn't without oil and salt and sugar, all of those things.
Are you still doing the no salt, oil, sugar, whole food?
At home, I don't cook with any oil, and I only cook whole plant-based foods, or whole plants. I don't even want to say, I don't even like the term plant-based, honestly.
I usually just say whole vegan foods.
Yeah.
Here
So I only make whole vegan foods at home, and I don't really like the term plant-based because I feel like it's a rebranding of veganism. Yeah, I cook without oil. We eat really healthy at home.
And plant-based, a lot of times when you see the products, sometimes it won't even be vegan.
It can be very tricky. We've bought things that are labeled plant-based and we get them home and they have cheese on them or egg. And I'm like, how does an egg come out of the ground? An egg is not a plant. So, but when we eat out, I don't worry about it so much. There's only so much I can control at a restaurant or when we're traveling, but
You mean like the oil and the salt?
Yeah, as far as the salt, oil, and sugar. And I found out that I am a low salt person. I fainted a couple years ago after a strenuous couple of days hiking and kayaking, and went to the ER afterward. And after they did a bunch of tests, they were scared that I had a heart attack at first. They did all kinds of tests on my heart. My heart is fine. I have no plaque in my arteries. The doctor told me that I was low on salt and electrolytes. Yeah, he said add salt to your diet.
Yeah.
So I don't sweat the salt so much.
Yeah.
Actually, my fainting episode happened after I'd been so strict, for a couple of years with no salt and no oil and very minimal sugar. But I also was exerting myself physically a lot for a few days, and I had been sick to my stomach, and I didn't realize that I was just depleted by, my electrolytes were depleted. But the doctor did say that my blood pressure runs low and to add some salt to your diet.
You're just cognizant now of how much you take. You don't just keep it out completely. That's cool. That's good.
Yeah.
I like hearing it like that.
I just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I don't add a lot of salt to my food, and when I sit down to eat at a restaurant, I never salt my food. I know that there's
But
enough
prior
salt.
to all of this, no SS, even thinking about doing no SOS, were you adding salt at restaurants too?
No, I just was eating pre-made frozen vegan products, which have a lot of sodium in them.
You're right, yeah. And you were probably adding salt occasionally at home, maybe?
Maybe when cooking.
Okay.
Yeah.
And not being very mindful of it, I guess.
Yeah, just not thinking much about it.
So it's hard, I just wonder, I'm trying to figure out what exactly you changed that matters the most.
Yeah, it's hard to put my finger on. I credit the oil. I think cutting out oil and adding more fiber and just eating whole foods is really what saved me. It put my liver back into homeostasis. I mean, I lost a little bit of weight. I lost 14 pounds, but I don't have the big sexy, before and after transformation pictures. To me, the sexy thing is the numbers on the liver scan.
So you lost 14 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wonder if you have a whole food proper diet like you do now.
Yeah.
And you're maintaining your weight and you added oil, in that situation, you'd probably be fine.
I hope so, but I'm
not suggesting or recommending it. I'm just trying to understand, because the science actually shows that oil is very advantageous. It's very high. If you get quality oil, it's high in polyphenols and.
Yeah, I think it's like salt. Like, I'm probably getting enough when I eat out or in other places. I don't really need a lot of oil. Yeah. I try not to demonize any of those foods, and I really don't want to buy into kind of diet culture or eating disorder or demonizing certain groups of foods, when I think plant foods in general are healthy. Since 2022, my liver's been a good size and I haven't worried about it since, and I've been maintaining a whole food plant-based.
And you're doing intermittent fasting and maybe a little exercise or anything like that?
Yeah, I do yoga 3 times a week. I walk every morning 3 to 5 miles.
Nice. And you weren't doing really that before?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I was so frustrated when I got the diagnosis. I was exercising. I thought I was healthy. I was like, I'm already vegan. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I've never smoked, never done drugs. I don't know what's wrong with my liver. So I really think it was the processed foods that were hurting me, whether it's vegan or
what kind of processed? Was
not.
it like Impossible Burgers?
I don't even like those. Like vegan sausages and vegan chicken patties and just fake bacon, fake Dorito, all kinds of imitation products of the standard American diet. So I think all of that stuff can hurt people, whether it's an animal-based or not. Food scientists have made our modern food very addictive. So all of this is by design, and it's hard to tear ourselves away from it. If we were raised on it, even when we become vegan, then we want those same kinds of tastes and textures that we were raised on, and we're trying to recreate something, and it's hard to move away from it if that's what you're used to.
So what's an ideal day of eating look like now?
Green tea in the morning before my morning walk, and oatmeal for lunch with lots of fruit and flax and hemp seed and almond butter, and then cooking together at night, making black beans, brown rice, avocado bowls, baked tofu scramble, veggie fried rice with no oil, things like that. I've learned how to make a lot of different things.
You've covered legumes and grains. What about like greens? You try to get greens in the mix?
Oh yeah, I love greens. I love my Instant Pot. I've really learned how to do batch cooking with greens and rice, beans.
How might you use that with the greens?
Oh, I throw in a whole bunch of collards, cabbage, onions, garlic, spices, a little liquid smoke, amino acids, a cup of water, and they're done in 5 minutes.
And what kind of other ways do you get greens in the mix? I think greens are really kind of not eaten enough.
Yeah, I know. Well, we get a CSA box, Community Supported Agriculture, from a farmer at our local farmer's market. So we pay ahead of time and pick up the box from the farmer every week. And it's just whatever is in season and whatever he's grown that week. So lately it's been a lot of lettuce and a lot of collards and kale. So I like to try to get a salad in with every meal, no matter what it is. And then the collard greens I can just mix into anything. And
then is there a variety of greens in particular, like lettuces? Because collards are high in oxalates. You don't want to keep eating collards.
Yeah. No, we get such a variety of lettuces. We get butter lettuce and mixed greens and sprouts, microgreens, all kinds of things from the farmer.
Nice. It's good to get all that out there so people think about it more vastly instead of just iceberg lettuce or something.
Oh, and I really got into sprouting during the pandemic because it was so fascinating. I had never done that before, and it was just a low-cost way of getting a lot of nutrients in, and I could just grow that stuff on our counter. We were living in a one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles at the time. We had no room for a garden, but sprouting was a way to get some good nutrients in. So that was during my learning process, yeah.
Cool. And sprouts, yeah. So what kind of stuff were you sprouting? Because I love the idea of getting that out there too.
I love sprouting lentils. They're very tasty and nutty as sprouts.
And pretty easy to sprout too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I just started with a bag of lentils from Whole Foods that, were meant to be cooked. They weren't specifically sprouting lentils. But I followed Doug Evans, and I did a story on him for a magazine, and really got into it. I bought the whole sprouting kit, and all you really need is a jar and water. It's just so simple. But I got into lentil sprouts, broccoli, fenugreek, chard. I really love the mustard green sprouts because they're kind of mustard and radishes, kind of spicy.
Now, what about family and friends? Have you had any success helping them understand this is the ideal way of being?
We already have a lot of vegan friends. I think a lot of people became vegan because of the punk scene. Maybe it was peer pressure, positive peer pressure. Neither one of us has vegans in our family, and my husband's family is supportive of his way of eating. My family had a lot more questions and was not as supportive, but I think they're starting to understand and at least become interested. They ask questions. They like the food that we cook them. I just try to set a good example and win them over with good food.
Could you be with somebody now, like imagine you just have to use your imagination, who's not vegan, in the event that you were
as
single?
A partner? Oh, no, I can't imagine having a non-vegan partner. That would just make things harder, and it would just mean that we didn't think alike in a certain way. We wouldn't be aligned spiritually, I don't think.
And then, like, how often might you cheat? Like, say, let a little dairy slip in, or?
Oh, never. No, I hope not. I'm sure we have both accidentally eaten things over the years, but I would never intentionally eat meat or dairy again. Well, one time I was at a party and I bit into a, no, that's something else. Those were hash cookies, and I do not do drugs, so everyone was like, don't eat those cookies, and I was like, I already ate half of one. I've been like straight edge since I was 20.
What do you think is the best way you already answered that with your parents, like how to influence others?
We do have a family friend. It's a friend of Rich's family who has recently become vegan the past couple of years, and she came to us specifically to ask if we could recommend cookbooks or ingredients or a grocery list, because she really wanted to commit to eating this way. And that's happened a couple times for us. And that always makes me feel really good, that people feel safe to come to us and ask those kinds of things, and just had a light bulb moment of their own.
Do you have any kind of like quotes that you could think of, or songs?
Songs?
Meat is murder.
Quotes. There's a punk band called Gorilla Biscuits, and they have a song that says "Cats and dogs have all the luck," basically talking about animal rights and how we treasure our pets and cats and dogs, but we don't care about farm animals and wild animals quite as much.
What are some other bands that have vegan members besides like Rob Zombie or?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the early punk scene, the 80s punk scene, there were a lot of bands singing about animal rights.
Like Morrissey.
There was Underdog, Youth of Today, Shelter, Gorilla Biscuits. Soulside was a band in DC where I grew up that sang about animal rights. So I became very conscious of it through the lyrics as well.
And did you ever do any sort of activism yourself?
I guess my activism has been using my work as a writer to shine the light on animal rights and animal sanctuaries and vegans who I think are making a difference.
And What does that like work look like? You're actually doing books or?
No, I've done a lot of writing for magazines. So I've done travel writing. I did a piece for Aussie.com called Vegan Las Vegas years ago when I noticed that Las Vegas was becoming a lot more vegan friendly as opposed to the first times that I had visited. I wrote a lot for the LA Tourism Board, always shining the light on animal sanctuaries and rescue groups and vegan businesses, restaurants and grocery stores, things like that. So I always try to give them a voice in media if I can, as a writer.
Are these magazines or whatever coming to you asking you to write whatever you want?
No, I pitch the stories.
Oh, you pitch these stories.
Yeah, so yeah, I've written about vegan beauty products and vegan hair and skincare. So I try to just shine a light on people who I think are doing the right thing out there in the world.
Cool. And do you find that we're moving along to some extent that's notable and significant toward a vegan world?
I think things are a lot better than they were when I first heard the word vegan. I mean, even just in the travel sense, in the global sense, I went to Denmark for the first time in 1995 and could barely find anything labeled vegan. No one really knew the word vegan. I kind of lived on bananas and French fries and Coca-Cola, not really knowing any better. And I've gone to Denmark maybe 10, 11 times now. And last year when I was there, it was very easy to find vegan food. I went to a high-end vegan restaurant for my birthday, and it's a common label in the grocery stores now, vegansk. It's really come into the culture a lot more than it used to be. And I'm seeing that everywhere. I went to London last year. They've completely normalized vegan. I mean, you can go into the smallest little bodega, food stand, or any ethnicity of restaurant and find a vegan option. It's just not even a question anymore.
So you're definitely seeing the world spinning in a more positive direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you ever wish you were raised vegan?
Yeah, I do. When my husband and I first started dating, I went back to Maryland to visit my parents. Woke up one morning, my dad's reading the newspaper, and out of nowhere, he just asks, will you raise your kids vegetarian too? And I never planned on having kids, so this is all theoretical. But I said, well, yeah, of course we would raise them the way that we eat and the way that we think is right, just like you did. And he slammed the paper down and said, that's just child abuse, and how can you do that, and blah, blah, blah. And he got really mad. And I said, you know, people in India have been vegetarian for thousands of years. It's not child abuse. And I was like, I don't know why we're talking about this anyway. We don't plan on having children. And he kind of stormed out of the house, and we had a big fight about it. So, yeah, so I don't know what set him off, but it was just yet another thing that he disliked about my lifestyle, I guess. Something that he didn't understand.
It seems so random, like.
Yeah, it was random. It came out of nowhere, and it caused a big fight, and he apologized later, but, you know, now I think it could have helped him. You know?
Yeah.
It could have saved him, maybe.
Yeah.
Like Dr. Greger says, I am going to die someday, but I don't want to be responsible for it.
Or the reason why.
Yeah. Yeah, I am going to die someday, but I don't want to be the reason why. Yeah. So I think about that a lot.
Yeah, and his grandmother living an extra, like, 30 years or something crazy.
Because of a lifestyle change, yeah.
Which would put my grandparents still hanging out.
Right. Right. Like, how old should we live? Yeah.
They would have another 10 years left.
Yeah. I just want to, for however long I have, I just want to live a healthy life, you know? I want to feel good in this body that I have as long as I have it.
Yeah, and be coherent.
Yeah, that too.
It's pretty clear that you're on the right path.
Yeah. I mean, I went vegan for emotional reasons at first, I think, but now I'm happy that the science backs me up.
Yeah. Like if it was ultimately going to be detrimental to your health or knock a few years off, would you still do it?
I think so. I think it would be really hard for me to eat meat now. I don't think I could ever force myself to do that mentally and even texturally and physically. Like, it repulses me. And it makes me deeply sad to think about the suffering of an animal.
Any last minute encouraging words you want to share that we can close on? Or
I do have a funny story about our neighbor. Like, since moving to the South, we've, you know, it's a lot different than living in Los Angeles, where we had a lot of friends who eat the way we do, and we didn't have to explain how we eat to anyone, really. But we have a neighbor who's 80 years old, and he was very interested in our renovations, and so would come over to our house every day and watch while we were renovating our house. And I had a lot of questions about California and the cost of gas, and did we like it out there, and was kind of very negative about it. And then he came and knocked on the door one day, and he said, "Y'all know anything about tofu?" And I said, "Well, yeah, you came to the right house. What do you want to know about tofu?" And he's like, "My iron's really low, and I read that I could get my iron numbers up if I ate tofu. It's really high in iron." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "It comes in them little cakes, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, it comes in little squares." And he said, "I bought one, but I don't know what to do with it." And I said, "Well, don't eat it plain like that. You have to season it. You have to cook it a certain way. I'll come over and teach you how to cook it." Well, he came over the next day. He's like, "That stuff tastes like sheetrock putty." And I was like, "I told you not to eat it like that." And so I made him a stir-fried rice with tofu and curry. He loved it. We went and got him they sell a chicken fried tofu here. We went and got him some of that from Whole Foods, and he loved that. And now he eats tofu. And we are friends. So, I also had to tell him to stop shooting the squirrels in our pear tree in the backyard too. So, but he said, "Yes, ma'am," and he hasn't done it since. So we are, it's like it's a cross-cultural thing.
there you go, yeah. You know, you can also recommend to him to increase his iron to eat dark green leafies.
Yeah.
But add like vinegar or lime or lemon.
Yeah.
That,
for absorption. Yeah. Oh, we bring him food all the time now. So, well, he helped me paint my cabinets, so now I bring him vegan cookies the rest of his life. So that's our agreement.
Nice. I want a cookie.
Yeah, I should have made some.
I had one before I came. So
yeah.
From sea level.
I know. I wish I had a vegan catchphrase. I don't.
I've thought about moving so many times, but then it's like, if I'm just in an echo chamber community, how much of an influence can I be?
This is such a good example.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think of that when we moved. We moved for different reasons. We moved for a few different reasons. We couldn't afford to buy a house in Los Angeles. It's so expensive. And both of our mothers live in this area now, and they're both widows. So we've been away for 20-something years, and we just felt like it would be good to be near them, help them out as they need. That's why we moved. But since we've moved, I think one of the coolest things is that we have friends outside of the vegan progressive bubble all around, you know, like Rich works in construction and works with all different kinds of people who have a lot of questions about the way he eats and the way he lives his life, and we have neighbors from all different backgrounds, and I actually really love that dialogue that's going on. I feel like our country was so polarized during the pandemic, and just been really nice to get to know our neighbors, you know, and speak to people one-on-one. I feel like there's so many other ways you can connect other than politics.
It's good to hear, because I'm sure it could be challenging, but you found a way to make it a good challenge. You know?
Yeah. I think it's important, actually.
You haven't been out here that long yet, so.
Yeah, I might talk to me in 5 years. I might be totally disgusted. But, you know, we did live here. We lived here 2004 to 2008 earlier, and now we've moved back 2 years ago. And Wilmington itself is a lot different than when we lived here the first time.
Yeah, because like 6 years ago or 7 years ago, I came through, and there wasn't like any vegan places, and now there's at least two.
Yeah. We just had that controversy with the other one. Yeah, and we have Tidal Creek Co-op, which is really important. I think it's really cool to have a health food co-op makes me feel good to be part of that community. And they've been here a long time, doing good work. And I don't know. I feel like maybe because it's a smaller town too, I can get involved, on a more local level.
Yeah, and I've already met quite a few vegans in this community, and
Yeah.
maybe all will cross paths. I don't know if you bowl, but one of them's looking for another bowl.
No. And we started, I don't know if you saw, but we started a vegan cooking Instagram account. It's called Just Plain Vegans. Because so many people over the years have asked us, what do you eat? And then when I turned to whole food plant-based and we started eating a lot cleaner, then people really were like, well, what can you eat if you don't use oil? Or how do you cook that and this? And so I decided it would be fun to just make videos so people could see how to make fried rice without oil, or how to make greens in the Instant Pot. So we just started that. That's been fun. That's us. We're just plain vegans. We're not level 5 vegans. We're not. Yeah. It's just trying to simplify it for people. Cool. And we've had a lot of people, meat eater friends, responding very favorably to it, like really liking it and saying that they got ideas for things that they could cook. So.
Do you have any other URLs you want to throw out there, or is that the main one that if others want to follow you, that's the best one?
My website is shawnakenney.com. I'm a writer and a writing coach and writing instructor. So if people want to read my work, it's there.
And that's mostly for magazines. Is that long form too? Or?
Yeah, I'm an editor at Narratively, which is a long form literary magazine. And I've done a lot of vegan and animal rights writing for all different, everything from Ms. Magazine to the LA Tourism Board, a lot of different, Paste Magazine.
What's one of the most impressive things that you've come across to write about, when it comes to veganism, and maybe some monumental change or a story or examples at least?
I've had a lot of fun doing the vegan travel stories. I wrote a story for a now defunct magazine, but I did a story on being vegan in Denmark, just because I had seen those changes happen over a couple decades. And I did a story on vegan Las Vegas. And I don't know, I like highlighting change in places. It's always inspiring for me. I also went to a wolf sanctuary in Los Angeles and met wolves and wolf hybrids that the sanctuary is taking care of, and I was very inspired by that. I like when I get to go explore places like that and tell their stories.
It's interesting because the wolf thing might be well, that's not really related to veganism, but at the same time, it is, because the killing of wolves is subsidized by the government to protect
it's a big
livestock.
Controversy right now.
Protect livestock.
Yeah. I like that I've gotten to meet a lot of the vegan mover and shakers in LA. That was fun, like Chef Babette and people like that. Bestie's convenience store. It's like a vegan 7-Eleven in East Hollywood. And they're doing a lot of really interesting things. They got a vegan running club, and they get food trucks every weekend. And
yeah, you've been to Sea Level here, right?
if we eat out here, we go to Sea Level once in a while. If we're downtown, there's a place called The Half, and they have 4 really good vegan sandwich options, and there are 4 owners, and one of them's vegan, so they always do good sandwiches. In certain places, we'll have vegan Brussels sprout tacos or cauliflower tacos and things like that. Ceviche at the beach, they're a Panamanian restaurant, and they have a lot of vegan stuff too. My dream is to have a vegan supper club. If I can get together enough people, we could rotate houses every month.
Is that kind of like a potluck?
I don't know how I'll structure it, but maybe whoever hosts cooks, the people who attend bring one thing or whatever. And we just made a couple of older they're new vegans, but they're 20 years older than us here. And he's Serbian, and he had a heart attack and became vegan. And his wife, they did an all vegan, I think it's called a Slava, a Serbian celebration, and they made it all vegan and invited us a few months ago, and it was really cool. And they explained everything and the traditions and the rituals around the food, and it was delicious. And a lot of fermented foods, cabbage and sauerkraut and things like that.
And he went vegan because of his heart attack.
Yeah, yep. He had a heart issue, and then they
And we actually met them at Panacea. They rode their bikes there, and as Rich and I were wrapping up, we were checking out their bikes. And we were like, oh, that's cool. They rode a bike path here. I wonder where they came from. And he asked them how far they rode, and we got to talking, and they asked us, are you plant-based? And we're like, yeah, we've been vegan a while. And they're like, we just started doing this way of eating like a year ago because of his heart attack, and we're learning a lot. So now we've had each other over for dinner and breakfast, and it's been really cool to get to know them and kind of share what we know too. Well, I had a rude awakening when we moved here the first time. I was going to grad school at UNCW, and the creative writing department had a welcoming party for all of the new writers called a pig picking. I had never heard of a pig picking, and the flyer had the cartoon pig with the apple in its mouth, and I was horrified, and everyone kept asking me, are you coming to the pig picking? And finally I said, no thank you, I'm vegan, and I really don't want to see, after I heard what it was, I said, I don't want to see a dead pig splayed out on a grill. That's so gross. And somebody was like, well, there'll be lots of sides you can eat. I was like, really? Are they going to have meat in them too? Well, probably. And they were like, well, its feet and head have been cut off. And I was like, that doesn't make any better. So I didn't go to the pig picking.
Well, this is how we infiltrate the culture, you know.
Yeah.
Getting out of our comfort zone, moving to other states.
Yes. Spreading the vegan love.